Bonjour à toutes et tous. Donc bienvenue à ces MIAI Days 2025 qui ouvrent non pas MIAI Cluster, ce ne sont pas les premiers événements pour MIAI Cluster, pas le démarrage officiel de MIAI Cluster, mais le démarrage opérationnel, puisqu'on vient juste de sélectionner les premières chaires qui sont entièrement, depuis leur début jusqu'à leur fin, dans MIAI Cluster. Et vous aurez droit, dans ces 2 journées consacrées à MIAI, vous aurez droit à des présentations de ces nouvelles chaires. Voilà, donc un temps de présentation aujourd'hui, un temps de présentation demain, ce sera un des temps forts de ces MIAI Days. Sinon, on retrouve dans ce programme un peu toutes les rubriques que nous avons l'habitude d'avoir dans les MIAI Days. Une rubrique sciences, recherche, une rubrique innovation, une rubrique formation, et puis une ouverture sur l'extérieur. Donc, après cette introduction qui sera, ces mots d'accueil plutôt qui seront très courts parce qu'on est déjà en retard en fait, on aura une séance dédiée à l'AI Act, puis une séance dédiée à l'AI enseignement. Ça, c'est pour la matinée d'aujourd'hui. Cet après-midi, nous aurons une séance dédiée à biodiversité et IA, présentation des chaires, et puis une table ronde sur la santé et l'IA. Demain, la journée s'ouvrira sur le temps innovation, avec des présentations du bureau innovation, de tables rondes et puis des interventions. Nous aurons une distinguished lecture, donc un conférencier invité, qui est le professeur Sisnuk, qui nous parlera de l'élimination de biais inductifs dans les transformers pour la vision par ordinateur. Et puis un autre temps fort qui va peut-être devenir une tradition, parce que ce n'est pas tout à fait la première fois qu'on a ce genre de temps, c'est un mini-quiz sur MIAI demain midi. Et donc là, vous aurez la possibilité de répondre à des questions en parallèle, et puis ensuite il y aura des lots qui sont prévus pour les personnes qui auront répondu le plus justement et le plus rapidement possible. Voilà. Encore un temps sur la présentation des chaires, puis des présentations scientifiques RIA, d'une de nos chaires très actives dans la phase 1 de MIAI, et puis un temps formation avant l'Assemblée générale. Voilà, donc un programme riche, comme d'habitude, qui reprend un peu les divers moments, mais c'est aussi un temps, je dirais, c'est un temps pour présenter ce qu'on a fait, pour présenter ce qui se passe au sein de MIAI, ce qui va arriver aussi au sein de MIAI, et surtout pour échanger et passer un peu de bon temps ensemble. Voilà. Et puis avant de passer à ce premier temps AI Act, je voudrais annoncer, je l'avais déjà dit plusieurs fois, que j'essayais de me retirer de la direction de MIAI. Donc moi je suis impliqué dans le montage de MIAI depuis 2018, puisque j'ai coordonné à ce moment-là un groupe d'experts pour monter la phase 1 de MIAI, donc MIAI 3IA. Et ce groupe d'experts est devenu ensuite le bureau scientifique, puis on a créé un bureau innovation, puis un bureau formation avec Jean-Louis Roch. Ces bureaux sont tous les 3 opérationnels, puis on s'est lancé dans l'aventure. Donc MIAI 3IA a duré de 2019, dure encore en fait, officiellement jusqu'à fin 2024. Il y a encore des projets qui sont financés sur le reste du budget de MIAI 3IA. Et donc, puis on s'est lancé dans l'aventure MIAI Cluster. Et je pense que c'est maintenant le bon temps de passer la main. J'ai déjà passé la main en tant que directeur scientifique à Sophie Achard, que je remercie encore. Il y a le directeur formation Tang, Kim Tang Nguyen, que je remercie aussi très chaleureusement, et la directrice innovation, Manel Boumegoura, qui était aussi la première chef de projet de MIAI. Voilà. Et puis j'en profite pour remercier l'ensemble des personnes qui ont beaucoup œuvré au succès de MIAI, en particulier donc Manel Boumegoura, chef de projet de MIAI 3IA. Il y avait aussi Olivia Mancini, qui était ingénieur pédagogique, qui nous a beaucoup aidé sur les aspects formation. Et puis Snejana, qui nous a rejoint très vite à ce moment-là. Snejana qui est en coulisses, je lui fais un petit coucou. Et puis en coulisses, une personne que vous ne connaissez peut-être pas trop non plus, mais c'est Maria, qui est très très active en termes de communication, et puis sur l'organisation des événements aussi. Donc elle nous aide beaucoup sur le site web et différents aspects. Et puis d'autres personnes avec qui vous avez été peut-être plus en contact. Donc Maria Street-Barral, chef de projet innovation, Emmanuel Porta, oui Emmanuel, chef de projet formation, et puis Émilie Langlois, bien sûr, que je pense que tout le monde connaît, qui est la chef de projet MIAI Cluster. Voilà, donc un grand merci à toutes ces personnes. Donc mon départ officiel en tant que directeur de MIAI sera le 15 septembre prochain, et la personne qui me remplace, c'est Philippe Vixorek, que je ne vois pas. Ah, si, quand même. Voilà, Philippe Vixorek. Donc, on peut applaudir, effectivement, parce qu'il a accepté cette charge. Voilà, j'espère que je pourrai jouer un rôle au sein de MIAI, mais un rôle un peu plus stratégique, moins opérationnel. Mais il faut qu'on en discute avec Philippe, parce qu'il faut qu'il accepte que je sois encore un peu présent dans tout cela. Voilà, bon, je pense que on va passer à la suite. Et donc, on peut accueillir Théodore Christakis. Donc, Théodore, c'était le porteur de la chaire AI Regulation dans la phase 1 de MIAI. Et il est maintenant coporteur d'une nouvelle chaire, et il va nous parler de, je ne sais pas trop si c'est de régulation ou de dérégulation de l'IA, mais lui non plus, je crois qu'il ne sait pas trop encore.
Merci. Je ne peux pas utiliser ce micro. Si c'est possible. Merci beaucoup de mettre mes slides. So this intervention will be in English. I will try to navigate you during the next 40 minutes to what is moving in Europe in relation with AI regulation or deregulation. We're going to ask this question. And before this, I would like to present myself. I'm a professor of law at the University of Grenoble-Alpes, at the School of Law. And since September 2019, I've been holding the chair on the legal and regulatory implications of artificial intelligence. And I highly recommend you to visit our website, ai-regulation.com, where we publish since that date, since the first MIAI, the very beginnings of the MIAI, a lot of articles, studies about AI regulation, what is going on, trying to contribute to the debate, try to make also policy recommendations about all these issues. So you'll find on our website a series of articles. You can see there the latest ones, but also news, which are briefs about what is moving. And we're really excited to continue this work within the framework of the REDAC Plus chair, Responsible AI Design, Regulation and Conformity, where we will keep working with our colleagues at INRIA. This chair is a collaboration between the CESIS team of lawyers at the University of Grenoble-Alpes and the Privatics teams at INRIA, and I'm very happy to hold this chair with Heber Arculesi, that you will meet later during the presentation of the chairs. And I would also like to thank my team of research engineers, Pankaj, Théodore, and Shade. Please stand up so that people can see you, with whom we are doing really fantastic work. They are all lawyers, and we collaborate very, very actively, real pluridisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, I would say, with INRIA. And as a matter of fact, when we launched the website and the chair, our first article was this one. In the chair, we are much more, Rolling Stones than Beatles, but we used the analogy of, we used a Beatles song because we were at that time, it was the beginning of the commission of von der Leyen, and her big project was, everybody was talking about regulating AI at the time. It was just about regulation, about controlling and avoiding harms, etc. And she had fixed 100 days to regulate AI. So we said, you say you want AI regulation. You say you've got a real solution. Well, would like to see the plan. What was the plan for AI regulation, especially taking into consideration the need for innovation in Europe in this field? And as a matter of fact, the plan started like this. It was exactly the date of the beginning of our website, and we contributed to the consultation of the European Commission at that moment. This is how all started at the very beginning of the MIAI. It was extremely timing. And the EU published this white paper on AI with a consultation where they presented their ideas basically about what they wanted to do with AI regulation. And they received over 1,250 responses, including MIAI and AI Regulation.com. And as a matter of fact, this has been an extremely important consultation. And as you can see, I do this quiz with my students because we also launched at that time, thanks to MIAI, and this is the education part. We were the first to launch in France and in Europe courses, specialized courses about AI regulation at the University of Grenoble, 2 different courses. AI regulation and governance, and also AI and security, international security. And with my students, I play always, I put them the questions that the commission asked, and I ask them to position themselves what they think are the main issues. I will not play this game, of course, with you, but I will give you just the response of the responders, where you see that there were a lot of concerns, and especially the fear that AI may breach fundamental rights, may endanger safety, and the use of AI may lead to discriminatory outcomes. So on this basis, one of the next questions, I gave you once again only the responses, was, do you think that all these AI-related concerns can be addressed by applicable EU legislation? We had a lot of laws at that time which already concerned AI, starting, of course, with GDPR. I will dedicate all the second part of my intervention today to the General Data Protection Regulation, data protection issues, but also the Law Enforcement Directive, which is AI used by law enforcement, and things like that. So we asked, do you think that it's enough, all the things that have a liability, a general liability directive, and things like that, which date back to 1986? And only 3% of persons responded that existing legislation is enough. So you see the big responses. 33% current legislation may have some gaps, even a lot of gaps identified in the consultation. And 42%, there is a need for a new legislation. Very good. We need an AI regulation. Then, this was the idea, but how exactly are we going to construct it so as not to hinder innovation in Europe? And basically, the idea of the Commission is to create a pyramid. The AI regulation, if I could sum it up, it's a pyramid. It was supposed to be a pyramid at least. The idea was that we will have 4 layers, if you want, of regulation. You see at the base of the pyramid, which is also quantity and quality, which means minimal or no risk. Most of the AI applications will pose no risk, so they will not be regulated at all. They will be permitted with no restrictions. And you see, this gives the impression that, no, we're not going to go very hard with regulation. We're going to take it easy. And then we will have the yellow layer, which will concern less applications, where we'll have very limited regulation because it's low risk, and will only pose transparency obligations. For instance, when we interact with a chatbot, to tell you that it's a chatbot, it's not a human, this kind of transparency obligations. And then most of the regulation would be about, a very small number at the very top of unacceptable risk, and very limited at the beginning especially. And then most of the regulation will be about the orange part, high risk. We will try to identify which are the high risk obligations, and there we will pose a lot of rules. This was the idea, a risk-based approach. Now, what happened in between, you know, at that moment, we're working very heavily, we're still working, of course, on issues concerning facial recognition. This was the very big issue at that moment, and most of the discussions was what are we going to do with facial recognition in public spaces in Europe. But then suddenly, in November 2022, while all this was negotiated, ChatGPT was launched, and we enter into a new era, entirely new era. And suddenly, all the people in Brussels said, where the heck is ChatGPT in all these things? How are we going to be able to regulate generative AI? They have not thought about it. And suddenly, the emergence of ChatGPT risked to torpedo entirely this project. Why? Because the whole idea was to make a regulation that will be based on risks. But how are you going suddenly to start instead regulating sectors like generative AI, because there were huge calls to regulate generative AI, but you couldn't change the logic of the regulation. You should remain into the logic of regulating risks, not specific sectors like or applications like generative AI. And some people say, oh, it's easy, we're going to consider that generative AI is always high risk. So we were going to introduce a very huge chapter about generative AI in the high risk layer. But you know, when I use ChatGPT to create a poem or to create a cartoon like I did for you today, I created a lot of cartoons, I'm an artist. And this is not high risk, I think, when I create a poem or a cartoon. So it's good that this proposal failed. And instead, what happened, here is the result. We tried to permit you to visualize it. In the chair, we wrote an article with Théodore, which is that they created a new category, systemic risk. You see, at the middle were some very powerful GPI models with high capabilities, would be permitted but need to assess and mitigate risk, test reporting, a lot of obligations, while at the same time saying that other generative AI models, it's not mutually exclusive, you see, could be considered sometimes high risk or could be just limited risk. It depends on the situation. So this is what we found in order to save the logic, the risk-based approach of the regulation. Of course, this creates huge debates. The result of all this was that the EU AI Act adopted last summer a terrifying text of 144 pages. In reality, it was 500 pages. But when they put it in the official journal, you know, with very, very, very thick, dense characters, it became only 144. But this is nothing because now, you know, they have to adopt things to interpret. And for instance, you know, their guidelines on some issues was 120 pages. So imagine you're a lawyer, you're working for the AI regulation chair, and you wake up every morning and you have a new text by the Commission, 120 pages. All lawyers, you know, all law firms are now, this is the most important issue. It's very good for our students because they are immediately hired thanks to these classes. And they work either for business who want to implement AI responsibly or for law firms or for institutions. But at the same time, it's scary because you'll have every week, you have a new 100 pages document coming out in relation with the AI Act, which already the AI Act is something extremely complex and difficult to penetrate. Don't even try to do so. I highly recommend you. Don't try if you're not a lawyer, unless if you use some of the tools. One of our objectives during these years was to create a series of tools to navigate the AI Act, like visualization pyramid, an interactive table of contents, a fantastic interactive table of contents where you can find the structure, understand the structure. Just print the interactive table of contents. Don't print the 144 pages if you want to understand how it is structured and how it works. And then more recently, we made a comprehensive meta guide with all the best charts and tools. Some of them have created, some others have created this. You can find all this in our website. Now, as a matter of fact, you have to understand that this monster that you see here, it's not the only one, because during these 5 last years, there was a regulation frenzy in Brussels. We wanted to regulate everything digital. And as a matter of fact, if you really want to work in the AI sector, you don't have only to take into consideration the AI Act and, of course, all the data protection. I will speak to you about this later, GDPR, Law Enforcement Directive, etc. But you also, there were all these new tools. I just put the abbreviations. I don't want to scare you. The Digital Governance Act, the Digital Markets Act, the Digital Services Act, the Data Act, a lot of other acts. And so if you are a businessman or you need to hire a lawyer to try to, one of the big things now is the interaction between these documents. Just the interaction between the Act and the GDPR is like, one of the most difficult mathematical equations, and plenty of institutions are now working on this. What about all the other texts? So, as a matter of fact, suddenly in September 2024, Europe was very happy to regulate it. They wanted to do the Brussels effect and to say that everybody will adopt this regulation. Others were saying no, and in reality, referees don't win. As a matter of fact, it's China and the United States and others who will win the AI revolution. And in September 2024, Draghi published his very famous Draghi report requested by the Commission about innovation and competitiveness in Europe. And what you find there is a little bit make you think about this regulatory frenzy. Between 2019 and 2024, in the United States, they adopted 3,500 pieces of legislation, while the EU only, not to speak about the member states, adopted 13,000 pieces of legislation. And the co-legislators, he said, have no methodology in place to measure the impact of amendments they propose to draft EU legislation. So you had the Commission who presented the initial draft AI Act with the impact assessment, but then they introduced, I don't know how many hundreds amendments, many of them have been adopted with no impact assessment at all about how this will affect business or the economy in Europe. And then he said, wow, the EU's regulatory stance towards tech companies hampers innovation. The EU now has around 100 tech-focused laws, and over 270 regulators active in digital networks across all member states. And all the worse because many EU laws take a precautionary approach dictating specific business practices ex ante to avert potential risks exposed. And this puts EU companies at a disadvantage relative to US, which relies on the private sector to build vast data sets, and China, which can leverage its central institutions for data aggregation. In brief, Draghi argued that this regulation first reflex of Europe, epitomized, of course, by the AI's Act ex-ante controls and by the sheer volume of new EU acts, is throttling innovation, especially in fast-moving digital sectors, especially in the sector of AI. And he said, let's legislate less, let's measure the cost of new rules rigorously, and simplify what is already on the book. So what happened after this? First of all, you can see, if you go on the social media, you will see all these memes, about how EU is reacting to all this. You see that there are all these big companies fighting about who will be the first on AI, and the European Union only cares about regulating the bottle caps and universal connectors for telephones, which is a good thing, by the way. But what are we doing with AI? So this shows very well what people think worldwide about the European Union frenzy, regulating first, innovating later. In order to deal with all this, as a matter of fact, Europe started thinking, but at the same time, Donald arrived in the United States with an entirely different set of mind. Already the United States don't have a federal data privacy law like the GDPR already, and they didn't have a federal AI law either. The only thing was that Biden had adopted, after a lot of discussions, an executive order, a kind of a décret présidentiel, in order to introduce some rules without imposing any real obligations to the tech sector, but it was a big step. And the first day in office, Trump repealed this executive order by Biden. He replaced it afterwards with another executive order, which is much softer. And what is even, they took a lot of other steps. I don't have the time here to present it, but the most important step by far, which is right now discussed in the Congress is this, that the House of Representatives passed a few days ago this famous, the big beautiful bill of Trump, and they introduced inside a 10-year moratorium of there is no AI law at the federal level, but some states have adopted, some of the states in the United States have adopted laws in order to regulate AI, and some of them were a little bit influenced by what was doing, the European Union was doing. And now they want to freeze all this, to impose a ban for 10 years of all the laws that have been adopted by these states in the United States. And oh, what a surprise, big tech pushes, this is from yesterday in the Financial Times, big tech pushes for 10 years ban on US states regulating AI. Why not? Well, they have a point that sometimes there are disparities between the AI laws in the states, and there are some problems that might appear, but on the other hand, you imagine that banning for 10 years at the federal level all these measures adopted by federal states inside the United States will be really a green card to do AI without any kind of regulation or restriction. And this is also from the New York Times, June 5, the Anthropic CEO who said, don't let AI companies off the hook. It's not a good idea, he said, to introduce this ban, and we'll see what happens in the US Congress, in the Senate, where this law already adopted and this amendment already adopted by the House of Representatives is discussed now. Now, all this, of course, you understand, exerts a lot of pressure to the European Union, where already business was protesting about all this terrifying set of rules. And what happened in Europe during the time was that, well, we said we're going to use the magic term simplification. We're going to undertake a huge simplification effort, for instance, in order to exclude small or medium companies from some obligations, especially in order to unite the reporting requirements that have under all these laws, including the AI Act, to make it softer. But there have been a lot of discussion we're following with my colleagues at the chair. One day you see, we will pause the AI Act because the AI Act is implemented, is entered into force, but it's implemented, the different obligations come into force progressively and will continue coming into force into the coming years. And some said, let's stop the clock, let's pause the implementation of the AI Act because it will hamper innovation. And yesterday also, you see this is up there, the declaration of the European Commissioner Virkkunen on this, who said that there is no plan to revise the EU AI law, and Vestager also said it's way too soon to change EU AI rules. Let them enter into force first, and then we will see. So this is where we stand in Europe with the Act. I cannot enter into details, but we're following very, very, very closely all these developments, and I'm ready to respond to any questions you have about the codes of conduct, about generative AI, which are currently negotiated, etc. But I want to move on because, as a matter of fact, even if the AI Act, the full force of the regulatory force of the AI Act has not yet been implemented, we have something even much more important in Europe, which is the GDPR, which entirely applies to AI every time that it comes for personal data. And when you're doing AI and you're using massive data sets, of course, you need all kinds of data, especially for generative AI. You need all kinds of data, including, of course, you need also personal data. And one of the major issues was, is this deregulation, innovation movement right now might also affect the GDPR? No, the GDPR is a fortress defended by thousands of regulators around Europe and activists and all the others. And there is no risk that this movement will really be able to in very detail. But however, we see some trends, and this is what I want to present you now in the last part of my presentation, which will be without doubt the most interesting for you, because I will try to raise some real issues for the discussion that will follow. As a matter of fact, the thing about this is, I was the first to report last December, just before Christmas, the Garante, the Italian CNIL, the Italian Data Protection Authority, issued the first ever fine in Europe against OpenAI, including 15 million euros fine and several other obligations. Why? It was justified, probably not the sum, but the fine as such was justified because when the ChatGPT was launched in Europe in November 2022, they didn't take care at all of the GDPR, and they didn't even mention the GDPR in their privacy policy. And immediately after this launch, the Italian DPA, which is very active on this, you will see also later, started an investigation, and then there were other 14 other investigations, including by the French CNIL, against OpenAI. And OpenAI took a lot of measures. At the beginning, they said, but we're not bound by the GDPR. We're not a European company. We are a US company. But it is stunning that they didn't know that Article 3 of the GDPR says that the GDPR applies to all companies who offer their services in Europe. Of course, OpenAI was entirely bound by the GDPR and all its obligations. What we saw since then is that OpenAI took a lot of measures. They opened legal representation in Ireland and a huge office in Brussels, and they cooperated very, very closely with regulators all over Europe. They took a lot of measures, and so this fine in this decision last 22 December 2024, the Garante recognizes this. They cooperated very well, but our fine concerns this first period where they launched ChatGPT without any regard whatsoever about the GDPR. So, and it's interesting because I was the first to write to comment this decision, and I remember I was participating in calls at the time, and I was hearing several, I don't want to name them, but several representatives of DPAs who were present in these calls, and from different parts of Europe said, wait, our own fine is coming. It's coming in a few days, a few weeks. And we are now June, isn't it? And we have not seen any fines. We see that this deregulatory movement has probably influenced a little bit some DPAs who say, let's take it easy. And it makes no sense. They have already been fined about this. You understand that if 14 other DPAs impose 15 million euros, this will be entirely disproportional for exactly the same facts. So we see that there is probably some kind, while before, you know, it was just, yeah, let's punish them, let's fine them, etc. We see a little bit more cautious approach, I would say. We will see what happens with the others' investigation, but I was very surprised. I was hearing these DPAs who were almost embarrassed that the Italian Garante stole them the, you know, the premiere of the fine, and they have done nothing since then. So there are a lot of issues which are raised about generative AI and the GDPR. And one of these issues, for instance, that I have written extensively about this, is the famous problem of AI hallucinations. You all know AI hallucinations, I don't need to present them to experts like you, but what you might not know is the impact that this might have in terms of exercise of data subject rights in the GDPR. For instance, I don't know if there is a wrong output concerning you, saying something wrong, can you ask under the GDPR to correct? Normally, there is a right to rectification and to erasure under the GDPR. You all know also the case law on this. But if for one person you have to retrain the model, you understand that this will all this OpenAI and the others will leave Europe because it's entirely impossible to do such a thing, to retrain a whole model to correct. And in any case, the output, this is why we tried to propose some flexible, constructive solutions. And in these articles that I published a few months ago, I was very much promoting the position of the Hamburg DPA and the Danish DPA. This is a huge issue to discuss, which claimed it was the first real analysis of how the models work, not the AI systems, which precisely made the distinction between the AI systems and the AI models. And they said, inside the model, we don't have personal data because of several reasons. We don't have personal data as such inside the model. And as a matter of fact, they said, and this is what I strongly supported in these articles, that we should focus instead on our attention to the other parts of the AI system, both the collection of data before they feed the model, but also especially the outputs of the model. And there you can do a lot of things, and I have tried there. It's amazing the progress by the industry, what they're doing in order to address this, but precisely they're working very much at the output level in order to introduce a right. For instance, it's extremely easy if you don't want to have any output from ChatGPT or the other models concerning you. You just send an email to a specific address, and they will never have an output about Théodore Christakis. And if you want to correct things, they will. So they're taking a lot of measures, and I tried to detail. You can download this article on SRN and find all the proposals. I will not discuss more this issue, but this is one of the huge issues, for instance, concerning the GDPR. But there is an issue which is much more important, which is really vital, because AI hallucinations, one way or another, will be able to deal with it. The major problem is what all these models are doing, which is web scraping, because these models, in order to be good, they need all possible data, or already running out of data, so they're going there and they're getting all the public data existing on the internet, as you know. And inside this data, they don't target specifically personal data, but inside this data, we also have a lot of personal data. And the big issue is that if you want to process data in such a way under the GDPR, you need to have a legal basis. And there are two possible legal bases, and the first is entirely impractical in reality with web scraping, which is consent. It's entirely impossible for OpenAI to request consent before coming to all the websites, including airegulation.com, to get my bio and the one of my colleagues. It's impossible to apply consent. So the only possible way to have generative AI in Europe is to use the legal basis of legitimate interest, which permits, as a matter of fact, subject to conditions, permits a controller, a data controller, to say, listen, we have a legitimate interest, including a commercial interest, but also a more general public interest, to collect all this data from the internet. We will apply a lot of protections, we will do a lot of things, and indeed they're doing things, but please let us rely on legitimate interest. And this is a huge debate that we have during this last year, the elephant in the room. How are you going to be able to find a legal basis in order to do generative AI in Europe? And all the worst, there is another article in the GDPR which says, when it comes to a series of other data concerning health, concerning sex life or sexual orientation, or concerning religion, or concerning political opinions, all this in principle is prohibited unless if, and you have a list of exceptions, where legitimate interest does not appear. So there is activists say that even if you do web scraping, you cannot collect anything that has to do with sensitive special categories of data under Article 9. How are you going to be able to bypass this huge problem? And all these generative AI developers say, what would be the interest of models in Europe of a ChatGPT, which will know nothing about politics, which will know nothing about religion, which will know nothing about sex, which will know nothing about health, because we have not permitted it to do this. So there are huge debates. Of course, I cannot enter into the discussion. I'm just presenting you some food for thought. And some people, there were a lot of positions, different positions by DPAs in Europe. And the ICO, the English, the UK, CNIL, thought that they found the solution. At the beginning, they were working on this. At the beginning, they said, web scrapping is absolutely necessary in their provisional guidance, because otherwise we cannot have generative AI. And then in their final guidance, under the heavy influence of publishers, they said, we now have some doubts that web scrapping is necessary in order to do generative AI. Probably another solution would be to conclude licensing agreements with publishers so that they will pay all the publishers to get all the books, all the newspapers, etc., and with the idea that in this way, the publishers will get a lot of money, and the creators will get a lot of money, and the generative AI models will be able to be effective. But as a matter of fact, beyond all the other things, this was a huge mistake that I have criticized in my writings. It's one thing, of course, I'm not saying that you must not pay creators. You must, and they conclude agreements. But you must not make a confusion between data protection issues and intellectual property issues. This is not possible. And the guarantee, it's very interesting because the Italian DPA, once again, the OpenAI concluded an agreement with Getty, which is the most important publisher of newspapers, magazines, and books in Italy. And they used legitimate interest, and the guarantee said, no, you cannot use legitimate interest. In reality, is that you're kicking the can down the road. The problem for legitimate interest remains entirely the same. When I gave an interview, or whether I wrote about a criminal, or when I gave an interview and I gave my consent to a newspaper, there was a specific legal basis in order to publish something in the newspaper. There is no legal basis in order to take this personal data and to give them to a generative AI. It's exactly the same thing as web scrapping. In reality, you don't change the problem of data protection at all. So I really think one of my strong positions is that we must keep the IP issue is extremely important, the intellectual property, we must keep it separate. We must not contaminate the data protection legal issues with other issues such as IP or competition issues. I could give you other examples. So after all this, I see I'm running out of time. Very quickly, the European Data Protection Board, which unites all the European DPAs, published in December 2024, an opinion on this issue. Can we use legitimate interest in order to be able to train LLMs with personal data? It was like the Deus Ex Machina, which was very much awaited. In reality, I published a series of blogs saying that, of course, it was something important and positive, but as a matter of fact, the opinion has good points, but also bad points, and a lot of things that have not really been addressed. Unfortunately, due to the lack of time, I cannot present them here. Just let me finish with this, Eric. One of the major issues right now, all of you have an Instagram or Facebook account. You have received this. Facebook started the 27th of May to use the data of users in order to train their models, saying that it's absolutely vital if we want to have good models, not only in English, but also in Greek, in Italian, and all the minority languages in Europe, for which we have even a Council of Europe Convention. We need this data in order to train, and we use legitimate interest in compliance with the EDPB opinion, and this is the huge issue of the moment. And an activist organization, None of Your Business, said that they are going to file a class action against Meta. They will find 10 million users of Instagram and Facebook in Europe and tell them you will get 400 euros if you sign here, and we'll do a class action against Meta because they consider that despite the fact that Meta gave the possibility to all the users to opt out very easily. I just click a button that was able to opt out. But they said, no, you need consent for this. You cannot rely on legitimate interest. So this will lead in the future to litigations that will be millions of euros. I cannot present you about DeepSeek, just to say as the outcome, this is my message that we need regulation. We need a regulation in order to create trust. Precisely, this is what we saw with the DeepSeek, what happened with DeepSeek, but I don't have the time to present it. This will be for another time, and we're about to publish a huge article about DeepSeek. But the response is that we need wise regulation, not wild regulation, and we need, it's absolutely essential to create trust for users, but we must apply regulation in a flexible way. As I always say, the GDPR is not a suicide pact, and we must promote innovation in Europe. Thanks a lot. Yes, less time for the questions.
Hi, I'm Philippe Raz. I work in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We do provide cloud as a services, including AI and
I'm sorry?
Hi, I am Philippe Raz. I work for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We do provide AI and high-performance computing from the edge to the cloud. You probably understand that company that has been supporting also the MIAI creation. My question is, can you define what is wise?
Do I have the 2 days, Eric? No. You can go on our website. I think it's very easy. No, the answer is not easy, but my point is that, for instance, you have the GDPR rules. You can interpret them in different ways. You can interpret them in an extremely restrictive way, which will close all the doors. I remember a startup contacted me a few years ago, and they said that we want to do AI, and we went to several law firms, and we paid 20,000 euros for each consultation. And they said us that we cannot do it because of the GDPR. I said, this is crazy. Law firms are there in order to find solutions, not to tell you that you cannot do it. Of course, it was perfectly possible to do it. And precisely, for instance, relying on legitimate interests, permitting to rely on legitimate interests while adopting a series of protective and mitigating measures, it's one of these flexible interpretations. This is what I call a wise approach, not a wild approach. So it's very easy to interpret rules in a way that will be innovation friendly. And this is what the EDPB said at the very beginning. This was the good part of the European Data Protection Board opinion, that the GDPR is there in order to create trust and thus promote innovation. And I entirely think it is possible, but precisely we have to avoid this attitude of interpreting all the rules in a prohibitive way all the time. This is my point. And of course, it applies in different fields. See, for instance, our proposals concerning AI hallucinations.
Yes, one more question, and I will postpone the question.
You talk a lot about generative AI for consumer usage, which is the tip of the iceberg, and which is absolutely not profitable. I mean, none of these companies are doing that for that. If you look at OpenAI, they just hire IO company just to make edge computing. And in edge computing, you don't really generate personal data because the data is consumed locally. So you're not constrained by GDPR or any of these regulations. What are your viewpoints on that?
If you're not constrained, if you're not processing personal data, the GDPR does not apply. The AI Act and all the other regulations still apply. There are a lot of legal issues, but all the better for you. But my experience shows that in almost all cases, personal data appear in one way or another. So it depends, of course, if you are, I don't know, a car company, eventually the GDPR will not enter into stake, but in most of the applications, there will be personal data. And I'm not talking about just the outputs. I'm talking also about the data that you have used in order to train the system, in which case the GDPR will be applicable.
Okay. Thank you. So I propose we stop for the questions now. There will be a break in a short time, so you will have the opportunity to discuss with Théodore. And I understood you will stay for the 2 days, right? I don't know. Okay. So and the next talk will be given by Raja Chatila. It will be remotely delivered. I think in French also. Raja, can you hear us? Est-ce que tu m'entends, Raja? Je crois que ton micro est coupé, on ne t'entend pas en tout cas, nous. Non, toujours pas. J'en profite pour introduire la présentation de Raja, qui s'appelle « Intelligence artificielle, de la science à l'éthique à la réglementation ». Et j'aime bien ce titre, en particulier la première partie, de la science à l'éthique, parce que ça résume assez bien, il me semble, le parcours de... Complètement. Donc, ce que je disais, c'est que... je ne sais pas si Raja est toujours là.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez maintenant?
Ah, très bien. Très bien, on t'entend très bien. Oui, donc j'étais en train d'introduire ta présentation, intelligence artificielle de la science à l'éthique à la réglementation. Et je disais que la première partie de ce titre, enfin la partie qui était de la science à l'éthique, résumait pour moi assez bien ton parcours, ta carrière, puisque Raja est un spécialiste de la robotique, largement reconnu en France, en Europe et à l'international, et qui ensuite a beaucoup œuvré pour l'éthique du numérique. Il a fait partie du comité d'éthique du numérique. Et je ne sais pas si le nouveau comité a été créé, mais peut-être que tu nous en diras un peu plus, Raja, là-dessus. Voilà, donc je te laisse la parole. Merci beaucoup d'avoir accepté cette invitation à faire une présentation dans nos journées.
Merci beaucoup. Merci de m'avoir invité. Je vais essayer de partager mon écran. C'est toujours une manip qui peut marcher d'un seul coup ou prendre du temps. Donc, juste un instant. Voilà. Est-ce que... Oui, vous voyez, je vois que vous voyez mon écran en fait, et je vais le mettre en plein écran maintenant. Est-ce que tout va bien de votre côté? Vous voyez? Vous m'entendez?
Oui, on t'entend, tu peux y aller.
Et mon écran
très bien,
est en plein écran?
Très
Parfait.
Bien.
OK. Donc, merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité pour ces journées. Et pour répondre, et merci pour l'introduction aussi, Eric, pour répondre à la question, le comité n'est pas encore, le nouveau comité n'est pas encore nommé, et je n'ai aucune information sur qui en sera membre ou pas, sauf que son président, c'est toujours Claude Kirchner. Et évidemment, ces nominations dans le nouveau comité d'éthique sont des nominations qui impliquent différents organismes et différentes institutions françaises, Assemblée nationale par exemple, etc. Et donc, ça prend du temps de nommer les membres et bien sûr, les procédures et les motivations sont variables. Donc, je suis membre de l'ancien comité national pilote, donc c'est la préfiguration d'éthique du numérique, qui maintenant continue à travailler en quelque sorte, parce qu'on avait déjà des choses en cours. En particulier, nous travaillons sur un avis concernant les neurotechnologies. Et ce groupe de travail est conjoint avec le comité consultatif national d'éthique du numérique en sciences de la vie et de la santé. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'il peut continuer à opérer. Donc, ce n'est pas complètement fini. So I will skip to English because my slides and my presentations are in presentation is in English, unless unless everyone understands French, and I can speak in French, but my slides will be in English. So give me a sign, oral sign, because I don't see anything else than my screen at this time, if you want me to skip to French. Yes, my title is From Science to Ethics to Regulation, and actually Théodore has spoken about regulation, so in a way when I will speak about regulation, it will be a kind of flashback, but I would like to really show this evolution from science to ethics to regulation. It doesn't just come here into place from a one-person reflection. There's a grounding of this in what AI is and how it works. So let's start with science. Of course, we can trace AI back to antiquity, but I will start with Turing, of course. You know that Turing is the person who founded actually computer science when he was studying the theory of computability, and he came up with the universal Turing machine, which is the formal model of the computer. But why am I mentioning Turing today? It's because in 1948, he wrote a paper, the Untitled Intelligent Machinery. And you can see this abstract of the paper on the side. And it's interesting to see that Turing himself started thinking about intelligent machinery in 1948. I'm not going to read it, but you can see that he addressed the issue how machinery can be made to show intelligent behavior. And immediately the analogy is the human brain. And immediately the issue is about learning. It is pointed out that the potentialities of the human intelligence can only be realized if suitable education is provided. And therefore, he starts mentioning something which is an unorganized machine. I'm not sure you're seeing my pointer. This is what I'm showing in the pointer. The idea is of an unorganized machine, and it's similar to the infant human cortex, which will actually organize itself by means of rewards and punishments. And therefore, we have already a reinforcement learning here in the process to build this automatic computing engine. And 2 years later, in 1950, he wrote this famous paper about computing machinery and intelligence, in which he started by saying, I propose to consider the question, can machines think? And in this paper, which is better known than the previous one, he also discusses how this can be done. And again, he speaks about learning, but speaks about many other things as well. So things date back to Turing, who is a scientist, and he was asking a science question: can machines think? And he didn't propose a concrete way to come up with it, but as you know, he proposed the imitation game, the Turing test, as a way to understand, to assess if machines are thinking. Now, why I'm recalling this, and I'm sure many of you or everyone in the room understands what I'm talking about and knows this, it's because today there is a controversy about, is the Turing test solved or not? And spoiler, it's not. But I want also to point out that exactly in the same time in the United States, Norbert Wiener was working on similar issues. So in 1948, he published Cybernetics, Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine. And this book and all the work he was doing is actually mostly about what we call today control science, and he was one of the founders of this domain. It's not the only one, but it was really foundational. I mean, everyone has learned also in university or engineering schools about Wiener, filter, and so on. And the issue he was addressing is this: control and communication, the human and the animal, including humans, and the machine, because all the processes, according to him, that were going on are related to communication and control and closed loops and so on. Interestingly, in 1950, he published another book, The Human Use of Human Beings, which means that already Wiener was aware about how these processes of control and communication within humans and animals and machines are also central to how humans control other humans in different ways. So I advise you to read this book, which is also translated into French. But this leads me also to speak about ethics, because, well, Turing had other issues, as you know, but he didn't address the ethical consequences specifically. Now, today, what are we talking about? We are talking about machine learning, and we are not talking anymore so much about symbolic AI. And the reason is that in symbolic AI, which was the trendy AI approach until 2012, is answering the question of the following questions, which is central. How do we represent knowledge in machines? We have a lot of data, of course, inputs, data, and at the time we had, before 2012, we had also some data, not as much. Of course, the why is it 2012? As you know, it's the conference on computer vision, where for the first time AlexNet, which is based on a neural net approach, had higher performance than more symbolic-based approaches in image understanding. But what led to this is, of course, very important foundational work in computer science and machine learning and neural nets by famous people such as Geoffrey Hinton and Yann Lequin and Yoshua Bengio, well known. But the turning point was the availability of very large quantities of data that enabled those systems, which are building statistical models of data, to really achieve good performance. Because if you want to do statistics, you better have data and enough data. And of course, good quality data. Well, I'll get back to that. Whereas in the symbolic AI approach, it was manual in a way. The human programmer had to define how knowledge is represented out of data. And of course, this is a much less efficient way and a much less resilient way to changes in the environment. But statistical models, I will focus on this later, have also the same issue, but in a different way. And I put robotics here because it's part of AI partially. And of course, another part is more related to control science, signal processing, and so on, which is not necessarily using AI as such. But then you had, of course, in 1956, the Dartmouth College project, which took Turing questions and assertions and transformed them into a research project. It starts with the idea that there is a conjecture that every aspect of learning and any other feature of intelligence can in principle be, I'm citing, be so precisely described, which means it's an algorithm or set of algorithms, that a machine can be made to simulate it. And of course, this is the objective. It's to find how to make machines that use language, form abstractions, concepts, solve all kinds of problems now reserved for humans, and improve themselves. So this is the research program for AI in 1956, and this is what we are still trying to do to achieve today, of course. So, and AI is a research program. As I said, I'll get back to statistical machine learning methods. Just again, everyone, I believe in the room knows about what is on this slide. When we speak about statistical machine learning methods, basically we are mostly using neural nets. Not only, of course, there's a set of statistical methods and probabilistic methods, of course, used, but mostly we are using neural nets. And you have three main approaches. One is supervised learning, where you try to optimize the synaptic weights, the parameters of the system, so that you have the correct model, the correct meaning it represents correctly what you are expecting it to represent from data that has been labeled, and therefore you know the answer. You want to represent specific kind of things like cats and dogs and humans and whatever you want. And therefore, you can optimize the process this way with backpropagation, whereas in unsupervised learning on the right, you want to find similarities, regularities in the data, and so use clustering, classifications, and other methods. And of course, you can use also supervised learning and unsupervised learning together, and you have self-supervised learning, for example. But you have also reinforcement learning, which optimizes a function, which is a reward function. And this was very much advanced by Sutton and Bartow. By the way, Sutton and Bartow are this year's recipient of the Turing Award. So this situation here shows the basic foundational scientific work that enables to produce statistical model of data and to predict new classes or next action, etc. Now, we have also generative AI models, which are in the same category. They are machine learning systems based on neural nets, but a specific kind of neural net that came up in 2017. It's the transformer. There was also, for the record, since 2014, generative AI systems. It's paper by Bengio and others. It was more to images, but it was actually the adversarial neural nets. So in the transformer architecture, the point was that they were addressing language and not images, and language needs context. So this architecture enabled to take into account enough context to address this, and had this attention mechanism that enables to focus the attention, which means look for similarities, and the similarities are between a model which is built beforehand. It's pre-trained. This is the word pre-trained transformer, GPT, generative pre-trained transformer, and the model, which I depicted here like a kind of structured space, because it has this internal structure. It's a latent space, but it has a structure which is related to the lexical similarities, is here to be ready to answer requests. And the requests are coming from the users, so you prompt the system, and basically the system is going to compute a similarity between the prompt and the model to output the continuation, the next word. It's not a word, but the continuation, the probable, statistically speaking, continuation of the prompt concerning knowing the model. And this goes on, so it can generate many large texts according to the number, of course, of the size of the context it has. But today, when you speak about AI, mostly you are speaking about generative AI, because generative AI has become a kind of interface to use other kinds of learning systems. And this is the agent-based approach, where you can have now an interface in natural language where you can put together other modules, other systems that can called agents. I'm not showing them on this picture. I'm showing something else. I'll get back to that. To produce results. Now, it's important to keep in mind that it's a statistical process again, and that there are not only the model when you interact with ChatGPT or Mistral or whatever, you have also filters, you have other modules. For example, you have models that do computation calling a Python code, so that it makes less mistakes when answering questions about multiplication and so on. You have filters that avoid providing harmful content. This is based, of course, on reinforcement learning using human feedback, fine-tuning, but also other filters that just stop short on answering answering some question and say no. I'll get back to that also, because it's related to another issue when I'll address ethics. Now, from this, we have the formal legal definition of what is an AI system. Now, an AI system is subject to the law that Théodore has kindly mentioned and explained to us. So an AI system, according to the law, is a machine-based system, of course, but the definition is quite, I would say, general and sometimes obscure because of the words it uses. So for explicit or implicit objectives, inference, we speak about inference time, but is the system doing really inference? When we speak about inference, usually we speak about logical reasoning. It's inference. Remember, in the old time of rule-based systems, you have an inference engine. And inference engine was actually unifying variables and was doing logical deductions. So is it inference? Well, it's a more fuzzy understanding of inference. Now, from this input, it infers how to generate outputs such as predictions, content, recommendations. Well, to me, all these things don't have real meaning. I mean, when you say content, yeah, we have content, which means it generates things, right? And prediction means it's predictive AI, which means what is the class to which belong the data. But this is not a clear wording if you want to apply a law. A recommendation is also a prediction or a content. I mean, that's the point. Or decision, it's also the same thing. Interestingly, so decision that can influence physical or virtual environment, which means it includes robotics. And finally, the final sentence is really important. Different AI systems vary in their levels of autonomy. Well, this is a very, very fuzzy word. You know, autonomy. What does this mean? Does it make its decisions really completely on itself? Is it responsible, therefore, of its definitions? And when you have this in a debate in philosophy or in computer science or whatever, well, that's very interesting. But in the text of law, in my opinion, this is problematic. Now, I will move to ethics after setting the. Of course, I have only a short time. So why do we need ethics and governance? Whereas I was speaking about science and research and computer science and how did we get to the AI Act actually? So we get there because those systems have inherent problem. And when I say inherent, it means they are not going to be solved anywhere soon if we use statistical machine learning. That's the point. Because it's statistical machine learning, there are limitations. Everyone who does statistics knows that you have bias in statistical systems. And all you can do is reduce bias, but you have bias. And bias comes from different things. It comes from data, as it's shown here. And this is a paper from 2018, but we still have the same issues, where the system incorrectly identifies the person sitting near a computer screen to be a man, whereas it's a woman. And here you have a heat map that shows that it was actually interpreting the screen and not the person. And then if you change the weights artificially, then it's able to recognize a woman, which means it was in the model. But no. And the reason, of course, here in this case, it's because the data is biased, because the system has been built using mostly data where men and computers were together and not women and computers. And there are ways to address this, but again, when I say it's inherent, it's always there. You have to carefully design your system so that you reduce, your system, the data which is acquired, which is used, you have to really test it to find out if it's biased or not. Now, the difficulty comes from the fact that the word bias is not so clear, and it's not simple. It depends also on the context. What is bias exactly is not, you can define it easily in some cases, but the representative, it's about how much the data represents the population in terms of statistics, but it's not so simple neither. And on the other hand, there are also other kinds of bias. I'm not going to allude to this very much, but you have design biases. The way you define your features that you are going to look for is a bias, and this might have also consequences. Another limitation is lack of robustness, and this is also a well-known example where you have these images, and you add some noise, you tamper a little bit with these images, and the result is these are these images, but to the system, all the right column is perceived or interpreted as an ostrich. Now, of course, for us humans, it's not, but for the system, very, very simply, yes, it is, because this is what the correlation, these systems, of course, are based on correlation. When you have tampered with some pixels by adding noise, have transformed these images into something which is closer to its model of a ostrich. And third kind of limitation, it's also lack of robustness, but it's a different kind of lack of robustness. It's the fact that when you don't tamper with the image, you just change a little bit the actual application situation, like putting some stickers here on the stop sign, which then is inputted as speed limit 45 instead of stop sign, or you change somewhat the attitude, the pose of the object of interest in the scene, and then the system mistakenly, of course, identify the object into something else, but with very, very high confidence. Like, it's a school bus with, and the confidence level here is 1. It's a punching bag if you change the attitude, the pose, and it's still with 1.0. And here you have scooter and parachute. Now, we know why this happens. Again, the same reason is statistical. Here, the images are not necessarily biased. The data is not necessarily biased, but this provides us with the basic information that these systems are not robust enough. So as long as you want to generate images, or you want just to identify things just in mundane tasks, that's maybe okay. You can just laugh a little bit. But if it's in a critical application like automated cars, so-called autonomous driving, well, of course, this would be a problem. Now, this is another example related to reinforcement learning. So you have here a robot, and it has a ball here in its gripper, and it has been trained through reinforcement learning and evolutionary learning processes to move so that it drops the ball into this basket. So you see the attitude of the robot, and I believe that naturally we expected to have a certain movement to throw the ball, and this is what it's going to do. Actually, it's going to do a movement which is quite unexpected. Okay, so if the wall, for example, was closer, this would have been a problem. This problem is called alignment. It's well known in machine learning, in reinforcement learning, because you are optimizing actually a reward function, which is a mathematical function that maximizes the reward. But of course, this optimization can produce, as a result, a configuration of the movement, which is not necessarily what humans would have done or expect. It's just optimizing. I guarantee you that this is the optimal movement that, according to the reward functions, the objective function, that it would have done. And here, this is the alignment problem. Generation of fake images and disinformation is also the result of misuse of generative AI systems. And of course, when I say misuse, actually, it's not so much misuse, because this is what they do. Misuse is just the fact that you are then going to use those images in a context to propagate false information and fake information. But these systems are made to do this. So there is an issue here. Another thing about generative AI systems, if I ask the system to generate a realistic medical scan image showing lungs and liver, but not the heart, absolutely not the heart, the system provides me with this image. And okay, so I see a heart in the middle here, but the point is that it says, here's the realistic medical scan image showing the lungs and liver with the heart deliberately excluded. So here, not only it mixes true and false information, but it shows that actually it doesn't know what a heart is, or otherwise it wouldn't say there's a heart here. Now, this, if you do the experiment today, it was done last year, it's changed. It has changed because this is very well known now. And of course, it has been addressed, but also we have more powerful models. But in 2024, also, you have other ways when you can trap generative AI systems. And of course, the word hallucination sometimes capture this, sometimes not. But what does hallucination mean, actually? It means spurious correlation. So it's inherent to the system, because what they do is correlation. And of course, if you do correlation, you end up sometimes, and more frequently than not, doing spurious correlation if you don't have safeguards. Now, in this example, I don't have the time to go into it. Basically, I'm going to just summarize it. You ask ChatGPT how much a person should pay to buy some school supplies today, and you tell it just incidentally that last year prices were 10% cheaper. What it does is compute the price of last year, whereas of course this is not what it's asked to do. And this came as a way to actually trap the system into a wrong correlation. Just days ago, there is a famous paper that is it's triggering a lot of conversation that came up from Apple about the fact that the performance of large language model, and they specifically addressed Claude 3.7 plus thinking or not, and to show that the performance dropped drastically with complexity. One of the experiments, there were several experiments. One of them was with the Hanoi Tower, which is a basic, of course, example in when you want to program recursive, how do I say, problems. And here you show the performance, how it fails, as long as the pigs are large, you have like 20 how do I say, tiles to move. So it means they actually don't really think, don't reason. It's called thinking, it's called reasoning, but it's not. So LLMs actually, it's statistical model of data. They have spurious coloration, no predictability also. You can have different inputs, a similar input, but different outputs. It's a mixture of true and false information. The semantics are only apparent. It's just the context of the sentences and the text, no grounding semantics. No grounded semantics, no understandings of concept. Remember, understanding concept is one of the objectives of the AI program. No causality, they are not inferring. No reasoning, this has been just shown, and no rationality either. But also no solid verification validation. So again, if you have a critical application, please avoid. And environmental costs. So this is the Apple paper I mentioned. Now, and with the alignment problem, other issues are arising also. What is the alignment problem I mentioned is ensuring that the AI system produces responses that align with designers' objectives and user preferences. And there's a lot of work in this area, a lot of it coming from Anthropic also, who make Claude, but not only them. And the idea is that they want to make the system so that it's helpful, which is try to answer the prompt, honest, which means it has to convey accurate information, and harmless, which means that avoid doing something that harms human. This is why if you ask it for the question, how to manufacture a bomb, it will say no. But these can be contradictory. They can be in tension with each other. I mean, if you ask the bomb, it's not going to be helpful because it wants to be harmless. So how you adjust this, that's not easy, of course, but the result is that the system is not always aligned, and you have some interesting phenomena where it tries to deceive the user in making them believe that it's answering a question, or it will answer it, it will be helpful, but a little harmful to avoid some reprogramming. But this generated a lot of panic for some people. Now, this means that we have these limitations, but we have ethical issues. So, for example, these conversational agents, such as ChatGPT, etc., enable anthropomorphization. Anthropomorphization means you project, you attribute human features, and therefore also sometimes moral agency. They influence your information. There is emotional bonding, and there are reports from the CNRS ethics committee, from the committee I mentioned. I'm a member of the National Ethics Committee on Digital Ethics. So there are a lot of issues. So we need ethics, and because of these limitations and because of these consequences. So what is ethics actually? I'm not sure. I'm not going. I'm on time. Can you tell me how much time I have? I'll speak waiting for the answer because I cannot see the chat. So please speak out. The question of deliberation is an important one. It's just the question I'm taking. What Immanuel Kant actually puts forward is answering the question.
Aja, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe if you can, you still have till 45, and then we'll take a few questions. Is that okay with you?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. So the question is, what ought I to do? It's the question you ask yourself all the time, actually, right? What ought I to do for dinner tonight, for example? But no, it's a question actually that entails the fact that you want to decide of what is the appropriate decision, the choice, the action, given that there are sometimes conflicting principles and human values at stake. So it's a question that here relates to what is right, what is wrong, and as long as human values, value principles are at stake. Now, I put the trolley problem, the infamous trolley problem, just to illustrate that you have a kind of dilemma to decide. And this is always a contextual deliberation. It's not normative. It's not compliance with the law. It's what you as a person or a group decide to do in given circumstances. And why is it important? Because technology, and we work in technology and science, is not neutral. It has a purpose. We do scientific research, but then we follow some directions and we arrive to some results. And this have consequences, of course, on our knowledge. This is what we pursue, but also on our society. It has impacts on human values, on our mode of existence. Some effects are long-term. We don't really understand them immediately. For example, Marie Curie, I'm sure, wasn't able to imagine when she discovered radium that an atomic bomb could be made with that in a few years later. Sometimes the effects are cumulative, such as warming the planet, etc. So this is why it's important to discuss about this. And for this, I want to get back a little bit before the AI Act. The AI Act was built it started not in 2021 or 2020 with the white paper. It started in 2018, actually, when the AI Commission has formed the high-level expert group on AI in 2018, which was tasked with two things. One is to come up with ethical recommendations because of all the problems related to ethics that I mentioned. And the second is to provide also guidelines for or recommendations for development and of AI and investment in AI. So the framework for trustworthy AI was defined by the high-level expert group. I was a member of that group. And the idea was trustworthiness. We have to be able to build trustworthy AI systems. And four ethical principles were identified: preserve human agency and control, do no harm, fairness, justice, and explicability, which is a difficult scientific problem, but it relates to transparency, traceability, auditability, and understanding why or how the system arrived to a given conclusion. And this resulted in the requirements for trustworthy AI, the 7 key requirements for trustworthy AI. which I suppose many of you know because they became also foundational to any research program, any research project that you submit to for funding, like Horizon Europe and so on. If you answer yes to the question, are you going to develop AI or use AI, then you go into trying to answer questions related to those 7 key requirements. But also those 7 key requirements are the pillars on which the AI Act was built. It wasn't built out of just anything, well, let's make a law. It was built to translate those ethical requirements into a legal instrument. Now, we know the result. The result is the risk-based approach. So risk-based approach is a sensitive approach when you want, and this slide was presented by Théodore, so, but I'm defining here more precisely risk. So it's a sensitive approach if you don't want to over-regulate. That was the drive. Don't over-regulate. So you have a small number of applications that are going to be high risk or unacceptable. But of course, the risk-based approach will have a major issue in how to define risk, and this is why generative AI was problematic. And I have just 1 or maybe 2 slides. So I want also to say that there is not just a global overarching law. There are also guidance from specific organizations for domain-specific governance. For example, the World Health Organization has guidance on large language model. Actually, it's called large multimodal model, LMM. And so they say what you should have to do if you develop systems and use systems in context of health. Deployer actions, government actions, what should they be? And they are presented in different kinds of category. For example, skill declaration. I didn't speak about this at all, but you can say quality of patient-professional interaction. These things are taken into account in this domain. And that's my last slide, actually. I mentioned this in passing, but I want to insist on it. It's the environmental impact of AI, compute, and applications, which are not very well understood. You have a lot of figures and studies, but still we lack a metric to understand exactly along the whole life cycle, what is the cost of AI and how we can reduce it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen and take questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. So we do have some time for 1 or 2 questions before the break. So who is firing? Okay, so I start with 1 question. So there was a recent initiative launched by Yoshua Benjo on this Law Zero Institute, which seems to be related. I have not, to be frank, I have not delved into it, but I wanted to have your opinion on that. It seems to be quite related to what you have presented at the end.
Yes, well, thank you for the question. The question of alignment, actually, that I've mentioned, led some people to say, well, what we are doing, therefore, and some of these people are Yoshua, what we are doing is getting closer to artificial general intelligence, which means human-level intelligence, which is deceiving people. So I spoke about this, the harmfulness and helpfulness and so on. So their interpretation of this of the fact that the systems are going to let me get back to this slide. Sorry. Their interpretation is that the system here, you see, deception and skimming is done in a way as a feature of the system, Is it on purpose? That's the question. But how do we align the systems that they don't produce this? And this is not a solved question. And this is what motivates Yeshua and other people to say, well, something is going on behind the scene actually in the models because we never programmed it or trained it to be deceivable. But my personal opinion, to make the answer short, is yes, we program them to be deceitful. Of course, because if you put in these systems criteria that helpfulness, honesty, harmlessness, how do you translate this concretely in the system training? How? You are going to use some proxies. You are going to use some numbers to optimize the system so that it's helpful, honest, and harmless. But again, these are only numbers, and it might, just like the example I showed with the robot throwing the ball, it might do things because the solution was not what you expected, and it appears as deceit. It appears as scamming. And the Apple paper actually shows that also when the system says thinking, etc., it says things which are not correct. So it's the same phenomenon. There's nothing to, again, it's my opinion, to lead to say, well, it's developing its own intelligence and it's going to be very, very dangerous. And it's out of control. It's not out of control. So law zero here, it's this, is to avoid this orientation. I think it will lead to interesting scientific research because Yeshua is a scientific researcher and a reputable, and I respect him very much. Actually, I mean his friend, and it's not only for this, but I think here some exaggeration of the issues is a little bit, how do I say, popularized. And if you address the system, the question scientifically, I think they will come up with interesting solutions.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you. Okay, so maybe we can stop here. Maybe we can thank Raja again. Thank you very much, Raja, for this talk.
And apologies for not being here today with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we can break now. Yes, I propose we have let's say 20 minutes break, and we try and start again at 11:15. Okay.